Hello and welcome to another week of the Storied Arcs podcast. I'm your co-host Mike.
And I'm your co-host Alex.
And today we are finishing our discussion of Extremity with Volume 2 Warrior. I have some questions about the naming conventions here, but we'll get into that. We left off the last issue talking about Shiloh. And
the robot and what that name might mean, if it means anything at all.
Okay, so as I was reading this, and I'm curious if you had the same experience or totally different, but as I was reading Volume 2, you start off, with meeting this new faction underground called the Essenes, which I don't know if you know this, but that is the third major Jewish sect in the 1st century AD and early BC or late BC. So the Pharisees, Sadducees, and the Essenes.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Okay, the Essenes were separatists. So it's like they wanted to keep themselves pure and away from the political corruption and other things of other factions, and this was kind of their trope. And
they're like Switzerland, then, right? Like they're neutral, because
kind of like Switzerland, except not necessarily like just washing their hands for the sake of it, but washing their hands for the sake of like purity of we're going to be not morally compromised.
Oh, okay. Right.
By Roman occupation or whatever. So at least that is my best understanding based on my memory of having read about that. And I think there was some debate. I had a friend who he did his master's in archaeology, probably a PhD now. He did a PhD in archaeology, and he was saying people debate whether that group exists or not, but they are the ones who ostensibly or theoretically wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls and had them hidden away and yada yada. All of this to say, I read that and I was like, okay, I don't think it was totally random that there was like the Jewish connection with Shiloh. But then when you get to like the part where they're writing names on paper and then they're cutting slits in the back of an innocent person. Mm-hmm. And you see our main character get, very confused and upset by that. I put this down and Googled, is Daniel Warren Johnson a Christian? Mm-hmm. Because I was like, this is the most Christian book I've ever read. And the answer was yes, according to most recent interview 2023. And I don't mean it negatively. I don't mean it like it's Narnia and there's an Aslan lion who's clearly Jesus, but more in the Tolkien way of he's taking the most beautiful imagery from a faith tradition and displaying it in another setting. He's not this is not a sales pitch for Christianity.
He's evoking the images, evoking the feelings, the ideas, without saying this is what it is. What you're saying, kind of right,
and not saying
he's calling to it. Yeah,
yes,
okay.
So I think he's trying to pull what he thinks are the most beautiful thoughts and images, and even if he weren't a practicing Christian, if I found out he was raised in a Christian household, and perhaps he walked away from the faith, but he still really admires from the outside some of the beautiful imagery or beliefs or systems or whatever,
just some of the ideas, maybe
non-retaliation, non-violence, things like that, things that certainly are underrepresented by so-called Christians in American culture in 2025. Exactly. Yes. So I thought it was I was very excited, found it very refreshing. I also felt okay, this makes all the pieces fit together, that he's left a few Easter eggs in here. Now I'm curious, if someone weren't picking up on those, which I think would be very easy to not pick up on them.
That'd be me. Yeah.
Because they're not that explicit. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if there's a rival theory that makes just as much sense, if not more sense, than what I happen to be reading. It's really just the naming of characters and factions and to me that was the tell.
And what I would say is the fact that those jumped out at you and it took you down a road that made logical sense, to me that indicates intention, but not the whole story, right?
Exactly. Yes.
It indicates an if you know situation. So the idea that those names and those acts, some of those specific things jump to mind, and the place that it takes you fits perfectly on what you're reading. like
Right.
it's almost one to one. But
Well,
if those don't trigger anything for you, there's no disconnect,
right.
right?
There's no
There,
comp. Right. Right.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
not
yeah,
like, oh, I'm missing
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like the story makes sense without any of the comparison.
I said,
But when I got to page 60, 60 or 61, depending on the numbering, I don't know.
oh, so
Um,
that would be issue.
This
You're
is
somewhere in
right
the middle there,
after
right?
she witnessed Theo watches this ritual where they're
Oh, the
slicing someone's
carving. Okay,
back.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the next page, she says, "This is how they keep the peace by cutting up innocent people, good people." That was when I put it down and I Googled, "Is Daniel Warren Johnson a Christian?" Because that's literally the whole theory was like peace was kept by sacrificing, someone. So like a good person, not just
A
someone,
person.
but
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
so anyway, I was like, okay, like either he's accidentally reinvented something like that,
yeah,
like if Christians knew about this should be really celebrating this.
yeah.
And that's, I think the other thing here is like I read this and was like, oh, I've been hearing about these type of ideas and stories my whole life.
Mhm.
uh Yet I imagine most of the Christians in the culture that I grew up in the 90s, 90s, mainstream pop Christianity, whatever, would absolutely detest this book
Would never get
for
past.
the
Yeah,
violence. Yeah, like
yeah,
would never make it to volume 2. Would
yeah,
be like, oh, it's a glorification of violence and this,
yeah,
this, and this, and it's got, I guess depending on how fundamentalist you get, it's got women leaders and
yeah,
all this other stuff. So it's like all of these things that are they are surface level objections to surface level Christians.
hmm
Yet, I imagine if Daniel Warren Johnson still sees himself as, practicing or believing in some sense, it is not surface level. It's not what you see depicted in
yeah,
media
yeah,
by and large, except for Wake Up Dead Man, the new
yeah.
Knives Out movie, which has a really powerful distinction between these two different groups of Christians.
All right,
Like
all right, all right.
the priest who is grabbing power and trying to get influence and political clout, and the other one who's like, I literally just want to help people. Like I think that's what we're supposed to be doing here is helping people, and it's like that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
We got to be doing this, this, and this. So anyway, I wanted to start off right off the Shiloh note because
well,
otherwise
but,
it's
yeah.
going to be burning a hole in my pocket
Well, yeah,
to
but
like have all of this laid out.
well,
Um,
so I think because I think what I love about that is again, it's from where we sit right now. We obviously can't, without any explicit confirmation from DWJ saying yes, this is what it comes from, this is what the influence is, anything like that. We can't make any hard judgment on that. But I guess the idea that because these things triggered in your mind and what followed through on the page is what you would expect it to versus having it be kind of discordant, And so it's either you recognize it and you see it there and you understand that what it's saying, or you have no idea what it is and you simply let the events occur in the story. Either one of those paths work in terms of digesting and taking in what this world is and what the characters are trying to express, whether that's just the characters in the story on the page or whether it's in a potential like metatextual sense if you know
right.
what
And
the base might be.
it's very possible that it's
there's
subconscious
no
too.
cross purpose. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, like it could be subconscious, and perhaps he's even saying like
Maybe so. Yeah.
even without Christianity, someone would stumble upon this idea of
Yeah.
like, in order to move on, there has to be forgiveness, and forgiveness, in a sense, is you taking a double punishment.
Yeah.
Like you were wronged, and you forfeit your right to retaliation. That's you taking double pain,
Yeah.
which is literally what the drawings on
carving
the
the
back,
names,
the
yeah.
carving the back
Yeah. Yeah.
is like we're foregoing our retaliation. The pain doesn't go. The pain has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But we're going to absorb the pain instead of inflicting it and continuing the cycle of violence.
Well,
And I think that was what was really powerful. But it could just as easily be a book about civil rights movements.
Well, yeah.
It could just as easily be like I'm not saying it's about these things. I'm just saying the names made me think this direction, and then it all played out perfectly.
Yeah,
I'm not
everything laid
accusing
out.
him
Yeah.
of writing an allegory.
But then that's what I'm saying. The fact that it lines up, we can't. It makes it like there's an Occam's razor idea to this, right? That yes, it's entirely possible
Right.
he pulled these ideas on his own out of thin air. As unlikely, the more kind of expedient thought is that these are ideas that he had in his head from somewhere already. he was taught this or he believes it still now. Whatever it is, these were instilled in him. And if they were, they probably came from this source here, you know? So it's like an A to B to C thing, when I guess it's entirely possible he could have just jumped to C. But that's not, that isn't, you know, the most likely, I don't think. But what I love about that, again, because if you don't know what the potential origin is here, it still tracks in terms of what was set up in the first book. This
Exactly.
idea
It's a
of,
self-contained thing.
yeah,
Yes.
but it's a response to the idea that we talked about last week. This idea of what does this road of constant vengeance and violence lead to? Right? If it's always you did this to me, so I did this to you, which means you're doing this back to me and back, you know, it's the back and forth between these two clans, right? You did this to my daughter, so I did this to your kid, you know, and so now he has, you know, so it's this Ouroboros, it's this circle here of constant violence, to the point where, as we said last week, whatever you think you're trying to quote unquote avenge just becomes about the violence. You know, you lose focus of what that is if all you're motivated by is that retaliation on both sides. It becomes a never-ending circle, and it becomes like, you know, mutually assured destruction. And so the idea that there would be this third path, where the reason I mentioned Switzerland, right, is because you have people from both clans there, people who have left either
Oh,
side.
sure. Yes.
You
Right.
know, because the first person that Thea meets down there is I sorry, I don't have her name down there, but you can tell because she has a circle around her,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Versus having the rectangle off her eye. So you know she's from the Pansnina clan, not from her clan, Thea's clan, Rhoda clan. So this idea
But
that
isn't it interesting that at least two different tribes need a
yes,
physical representation on their body of the trauma that they've been
yes,
through?
yes,
Like
yeah,
they
yeah,
have
yeah.
to wear this
Well,
badge.
and that's the thing, though. That's another part about this world. Is that something that's given to them? Is that something they have? Is it, you know? But
Right.
it doesn't matter. The point is, you have this on your face, I have this on my face, and we're different. And that's a simple way to tell I'm on my side, you're on your side. And here you have, you know, you have this third option here, this underground option that is trying that looks at all this mayhem and says like, this is unsustainable. Like, we can't keep doing this. There has to be a different way. But you're right. It's not as easy as, oh, well, I just forgo all of this. You know,
Exactly.
you know, it's not just I'm so much above this that I renounce all of the vengeance and violence of it.
And
No,
I think that's
it's an
always
acknowledgement. Yes.
that's always the naive person's solution of
Yes.
like, can't you
Yes.
just, forget and move on? And it's like,
Can't we all just get along?
right.
You
And,
know?
and like I've talked to people like that, and I'm like, I'm really happy for you that nothing so bad has happened in your life yet.
Yeah.
And I say yet on purpose because I really do believe
Yeah.
everyone at some point, inevitably, life will do this to you. You will have some dark night of the soul
Yeah.
type
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
By the way,
You're-
there was also the spin on I heard it in an Irish folk song, an eye for an eye till everyone's blind.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
here,
sure, yeah.
they did the hand for hand until you have no hands, which
Yeah.
isn't quite as poetic, but I think it was like, well, I'm not going to rip it off completely,
Yeah.
but we're just going to show
And
what
it fits what happened to the book specifically. So yeah.
right. But I do remember that code, the ethical code, is called the Lex Talionis, the eye for an eye, hand for a hand, tooth for a tooth, and um, people in modern days are often citing that as like, what a barbaric, legal code. And at the time it was written, it was revolutionary and progressive because it meant the same protection for the rich and the poor. Rich people could not take more than just a hand for a hand from the poor, which was the norm back then. And so it was this great equalizer and egalitarian
Sure.
thing, but it was meant as a societal code for justice, not a personal vendetta of like, which is how it's always misused. In fact, since I have a new baby at home and I spend a lot of time like bouncing a baby with my foot in front of a TV, I don't have the brainwidth or the bandwidth for watching new material. So I have recently been rewatching The Flash season 1. And by the way, it totally lives up to my memory of it. When you get to like the late teen ones, and there's like a little time travel, and it starts to get crazy sci-fi good.
Yeah, you get a little
Uh,
weird. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
It goes from Scooby-Dooing to like next level.
Yeah.
But there is an episode that I just watched yesterday as I was reading this book where like his dad's name, Barry's adopted dad, Joe.
Mm.
Joe gets kidnapped by the weather wizard, and he's like, I killed your brother, and you just want an eye for an eye, you savage, basically. And it was like, so that's the modern interpretation of that
Yeah.
law, because we think only villains think that way.
Mhm.
And in its historical congress, in the history of like philosophy of justice, it was a landmark step to say, everybody gets the same treatment regardless of whether you're a citizen or, an alien, or whether you're, man or woman, or rich or poor. But yes, like it will eventually result in an eyeless, handless society, which is
Yes.
why,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was not the final step on the journey. But to act like it never had merit, it always bothers me as kind of an anachronistic view of human evolution and
Well,
society.
yeah, yeah. That's what ends up happening though with phrases and sayings and things like that as society quote unquote progresses and we move beyond things like that. But yeah, it'd be wonderful if we had some sense of, you know, equal justice and punishment on things.
Right. Yeah. No, that'd
Yeah,
be like
yeah,
still
yeah,
would be
yeah.
an improvement.
Yeah, maybe we go back to that in some cases.
Right.
That would
Yeah.
be,
Like if all forms of cocaine were
yeah,
tried,
yeah.
evenly.
Yeah, I said, yeah,
Um,
it said we're not taking actual eyes, but just the idea of equal punishment, for
right.
equal crime.
Like, yeah.
That'd be
Because there's
great.
always the letter of the law, and then there's the intention of the law, which is
Yeah,
like, we get into that all the time about like our Constitution, which was not written that long ago.
yeah,
Like, it should not be that difficult to figure out what the
no,
intent and the thrust and the direction were. But also, you get into this is like, this is always, the fascinating sidebar for me is when people are like, oh, the founders meant X, Y, and Z. I'm
yeah,
no, neither side can claim that definitively because both sides were present. And
yep,
like both of them had different agendas. And what we have written down is what they settled on in the
yeah,
middle. So you can't claim like, oh, by writing it this way, they were really trying to frame it in this direction. And it's like, no, one side was trying to frame it in that direction. The other side was trying to hedge against that direction and was pulling it in the other direction and hedging it. So like, but people just act like there was this unanimous consent around, constitutions and laws and things like that. It's like,
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what the last law that passed with unanimous consent was, but I'm going to guess it was at least 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while for that. It's been a while for that, definitely. So
So anyway, your thoughts on this book? I mean,
I
like, you can start at the beginning or start at the end.
I want to start at the end here because I think we talked about the setup there. The thing that I love about how this book ends, because we talk about endings are tough, and in a way, it's almost like a non-ending for this book, which I think is really interesting. Right? It's
Hmm.
like it ends. The book ends. The story ends. Right? So we have our two prodigal daughters, as it were. Right? We have Thea, and we have I think we're calling her Honora. Right?
Yeah, the
That's the
Penzinga or whatever.
well,
I don't even know
yeah.
the
The
faction's name.
Panzina is
Penzina. Yeah.
that's the other tribe there, the Circle tribe. Honor is the daughter of their ruler who is Nim, and she's the one that has like the burned, scarred face, right?
Right.
That Nim, clearly happened because of something that Thea's father and her clan did. But you have these two daughters, these two scions of these clans. They momentarily have to come and work together, right? Regardless of how reluctant it might be, because there's some larger threat going on there. By the way, real quick about Shiloh turning into a giant kaiju.
What the
Um,
hell?
I I got a feeling that's just because DWJ wanted to draw a giant kaiju like that. Because
I think
like
that's probably true.
the idea of
As
making this
our
this
friend Rosie Knight
techno
says,
organic,
it's been hot kaiju
kind of thing.
summer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I also thought if we're carrying the analogy along, it was very this is what the Ark of the Covenant does at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just blow up and get huge and devour all life around it. And that's where, the Shiloh thing kicked in from
okay.
volume one discussion.
Might be stretching that the imagery a little bit on that one there,
Now I'm determined to make it work. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
but you had that idea, right? You had these two, like the next generation, the ones that are, as we talked about,
Which I think I said last week. I said there's only two ways this can end.
yeah, yeah,
This
pretty
really
much.
sappy, sentimental way
Yeah.
where, like, oh, they all realize they should lay their arms down
Hmm.
and sing Kumbaya, which is really cheesy and you can't do it.
Yes,
This is not that kind
exactly.
of story.
Yes.
And the other one is you reach a critical moment where the characters have the power to decide, but we don't get to see what their decision is. We
Yes.
have to guess. And that's my favorite type of ending, and that's
Yes.
exactly what he gave us.
Exactly. Yes.
And
Yes. Yes. That's what I was building
and
towards, this idea.
both of these women have been through the journey to know enough to reject their father's teaching or their mother's teaching, as it were, but they also have gone just far enough down the path of exploring the other side that they see the merit in their parents'
Yeah.
worldview.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like
Well,
it's not cut and dry for either of them.
exactly.
You know what they'll end up doing.
That idea of, well, and not only have they gone on that path, but they went down that path for a while together, right?
Right.
So
And you
they're not
need
just like some
them.
faceless person. You relied on each other in a moment when they could have turned on you, and they did it, and now you're back separate. Now you're back with your own clans, and yeah, how do you honor the people that you are now appointed to lead, but also understand that, like, the stuff we've been doing, like, that's not going to work anymore. So can you exist without that? What are you without that if you don't have your opposition? And yeah, leaving it on this slightly unknown but not totally ambiguous,
But the kicker for me is that whatever piece or whatever they're aiming to get only works if they are both stay committed to this new
Oh
way of
yes.
thinking,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like, oh, I've decided we're going to be nonviolent, yada, yada, yada. Um, well, that's great. But as soon as you get attacked, your people will demand retaliation, and then you're
Yeah,
right back in the cycle.
yeah.
So you both have to be best friends, keep this in lockstep, keep this in unison, and it will be much harder to govern your own people through the
Hmm.
way of peace than it will be the other party.
Yeah. Oh
Because
yeah, yeah.
just because
Because
you've given up the idea of retaliation does not mean the people underneath you have.
exactly, because they're looking at you and all, because everyone else in your clan, that's all they know as well. They haven't had the experience that these two girls have had, that Thea and Norva have. They've been through a transformative experience in terms of how they see the world and how they see each other, both as individuals and I think also in the larger sense of how they view each other's clans. So they have this larger worldview who are now put in charge of their people who have a much more myopic view. So how do you translate? How does that trickle down? How do you translate that? How do you get them to be on your side to understand that we can't keep doing this, And yeah, what happens if someone breaks the truce, goes rogue and does that? That can start a war. So now one of our leaders is put in a position, right, where what do they do? Do they follow through on those actions or do they punish one of their own? And if they do that, what does that mean for their standing as a leader in their clan? Because this person was just doing the thing they'd always done. So what does that say about people's ability to change and move forward? And I think that's an idea that this book expresses and puts out there without telling you or even exploring what that idea is.
Right. Well, and I
because
think there's
that's what the next book is. That's
exactly
what the
the
next
next book
story is how
like,
hard can you change? What does
well,
that step look like?
and yes, because the big question for me at the end of this is not as much whether our two women characters have changed.
Yes.
I wonder how permanent the change is. But okay, you convinced two people.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
going
Yes.
to take a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Now they have to convince other people without the luxury of going on this big journey
Mm-hmm.
that they went on. And and that is a luxury to say, like, I've got to go on this journey of self-discovery and
Mm-hmm.
rejection and meeting new people and broadening my horizons and yada yada yada. So trust me, fundamentally
Yeah,
change
yeah,
everything about who you are now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like that's why so many of these type of leaders in our world sound so naive. It's
yeah,
because we have not gone through what they've gone through,
yeah,
and they're just saying like, "Trust us, the path of peace is better." And it's
yeah,
like, yeah, f that. I've
yeah.
got a dead mom, dead brother, dead sister. I'm missing a
Exactly.
hand.
Yeah, yeah.
Our eye got gouged out.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
you know, like you assume the leader doesn't know what you know, and without assuming that you don't know what the leader does know.
Well, yeah,
And I think that's
absolutely, because there's no reason for the people in the clan, the quote unquote like regular people there, to have any other perspective. How could they?
right.
You know,
Yeah, how could they?
and so
Exactly.
yeah, and so what I
I'm not
liked
shaming
about
them.
oh no, yeah, of course, of course, of course. But in those final pages, maybe it's just a straight final page when kind of both Thea and Honora are called upon to like seemingly like take that mantle and address their clans. I think there's something and maybe in this in the way it's drawn and the way it looks, like you can see the weight of that on them, right? Then
Right.
you get a sense, at least I read it, there's not a reluctance, but there's an understanding that both of them are grappling with the same ideas. They're with the same situation of like, how do I do this? Knowing what I know now, having gone through what I just did. And there and it shows, I think, the two of them being on the same page across these clans, across this world. But knowing that they have to figure out what the next thing is, what the next step is with their people. And having no idea if that's even possible. But I think clearly wanting it, they
Right.
want to be leaders. They want to carry on and be strong for their people, but also like again, the rejection of the stuff we've been doing, because like that leads to nothing. So how do I convince everyone else that this is what it's supposed to be? And I think you can see that in the way he draws them kind of wordlessly as they both kind of prep for these moments at the end. And I thought that's really, really cool, really awesome.
Yeah. How would you rate this ending in terms of, comic endings in general? And it's it's just amazingly rare. I think of a 12 issue series as my ideal length of a series, but we don't do that many 12 issue series here.
We because there really aren't a lot, in that kind of maxi series kind of vein there. I part of me I I like the ending, but there's a little part of me that knows I like it a little more because it wasn't the other ending you said.
Yeah, oh, totally.
So
I
so
think
so
that's
so
perfectly
so,
valid.
so okay, all right. So
Say like
well,
when you
I feel
can
guilty
see the
about judging it.
possibilities coming
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and they take the road less traveled. Because
yeah,
I
yeah.
do think
Or the
this is
more
one of
interesting
those
road. Yeah,
things. Yeah, the more interesting road. But this is one of those things where like I could see someone trying to adapt this movie and the executives being like, that's a little too ambiguous for a popcorn flick. We're gonna change the ending to make it like this. And
ends
like
with the Predator meme, clasping
well,
hands.
yeah, I mean, like it would end with something less nuanced,
Yeah,
something that's just more in your face, or something that feels more resolved. Of like, and then they all lived happily ever after, or it's a tragedy, and then they all gave back into their violence, and it was like
yeah.
none of this happened, none of this mattered. Um, I
That
don't know how
that one's
often
too
they would have.
nihilistic. That I don't think that they go on that
Well,
route.
they
That
would
one's
consider themselves really artsy for that and brave, even though I think what Daniel Warren Johnson did here is
this
the
is the
most
brave one.
artsy and the most brave, right?
Absolutely,
But
absolutely. So yeah,
good luck telling that to a studio executive, the
yeah,
dreaded notes phase.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we have notes,
Yeah.
every
Okay, so
writer's
that's
work.
good. I was worried about the idea that I'm giving this props for the thing it didn't do that I consider lesser. But
No,
in
because you
general,
didn't write yourself into a corner, right? And
yeah, yeah.
we read enough stories that we know the options you've left on the table for yourself.
And you know what? Even as I'm thinking about it back through, I love that there wasn't even like a last moment of the two of them parting. You know,
Oh,
where
right. Yes.
where where where, where,
Where they're
where
like, we're gonna change things now.
yeah, or there wasn't even any sort of even like a sidelong glance of like we're good,
Right.
right? There was nothing about that of like there was no final moment where they agreed, well, this can't continue, right? Yeah, like, like
Right.
there was no agreement between, like, well,
And
whether
I
it was
think it was
explicit or not,
because
it just happens.
ultimately the conflict isn't really between the two of them. It's an
Yes.
internal conflict of, are you going to devote your life to
Yeah.
retaliation?
Yeah.
This isn't, I think you said it some way in volume one that I really like, of about how this, like, there's all these external battles and things like this, but this is an internal decision for a character.
Yeah.
Like this, that's what this story is about.
Mhm.
Now, of course, the internal decision has weight in the external world.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, quite a bit in this case, but it does not take away the fact that this is primarily what's happening in the character's head.
Yeah. This is Thea's journey. And, we see it reflected in Rolo, we see it reflected in Nora, and we see it reflected in, again, the warrior from the Panzania clan who is down in with who replaces the Great Mother as the leader, right? Whose
Oh,
name
right. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't write down, I forget, but it's reflected in all of these things, right? The rejection, she sees her brother's rejection of her clan and her father's ways, and that starts her down a path. She sees when she gets down to um when she's rescued and she sees this other warrior who has already given up the path, right? It's already made that change. And so she sees maybe it's possible. And then after she's kind of gone down that way, she then interacts with Honora to try and change her mind. So it's like in a way, Thea's journey is mirrored through these other characters that she comes in contact with who are already at different parts of their own journey. And so seeing that reflected back in her, and as we track her journey through that, to get to the point at the end where you understand what she is thinking and what she believes, right?
Right.
You understand where her mindset is, but there's still that question of, okay, that's great, we got one person, cool, and you're the leader, that's great. When you turn around and you face the rest of your clan, and everyone responds with whatever hand signal thing they
Right.
do, like the cover your eye or the certain, everyone responds to you because you are it. You're the top of the mountain here. How do you just be like, all right, guys, we got a direction change for the company here.
Right.
We're
Everybody
pivoting
back
away.
in office.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah,
Of like, we determined the culture matters more, and it's
yeah,
gonna be, and we're worried about productivity, so we're moving back in the office, and everyone's like,
yeah.
but we're more productive at home.
Yeah, we're pivoting to video now. This is what we're going to do. This is the new business. But that idea of just, again, I agree. I don't want to call it like daring or brave or whatnot, but it's the most interesting choice, because it's somehow, it feels more satisfying to me, and I think you would agree with this, right? This feels more satisfying than the like literal bow tied on the end and be like, and that's it, ta-da.
This is the ending that wouldn't have written itself. And I think the other endings are the ones where it's like,
Okay, cool. I like
you
that.
start telling the story and the gravity of that story ends in this predictable place. And he didn't do that. So I think anytime you can resist the orbit of like tropes, and I think he uses tropes in a helpful way. Like, we know about, like, do you question a society that has mechs and still uses bows and arrows? No.
No. Yeah.
Because we're in a sci-fi fantasy world,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just like, it's space medieval.
Yeah.
It's tribal spacism. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, that shouldn't be a thing, but it's like, it's a trope, it exists, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
To me, it's like a lot of like, anyone who writes cyberpunk stuff, like, or steampunk.
Oh, sure.
Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
cyberpunk
yeah.
as well, I guess.
Yes,
But
it's the other way around. Yeah.
steampunk is just like, so no one's just going to do like a Tolkien-esque deep dive on why they're so advanced in X, Y, and Z ways, but not other ways, and how this stuff actually works. It's like, no, because it looks awesome.
Yeah,
And we
it's 'cause
don't
I like
care.
it's the storytelling version of I like ice cream and I like pizza, so we're gonna put them together. It's like I like this cool
Exactly.
thing.
Right.
Like, I want to draw mechs and spaceships and a hover bike kind of thing that can fly through the air,
But I
but
don't want
also
them to have cell phones.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I don't want lasers. I want bombs and explosions, and I want people cutting off limbs and hand to hand combat violence. And why not both? You know,
Okay.
and
To
that's
that
what you
point,
get.
let me say, can I point out the only thing that I don't love about this book? It's not a nit to pick. This is just a personal preference.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the battle stuff is like just boring. Like it's not interesting to me. And now, like I'll say that's also my experience when I read like mostly, for the most part, when I read like superhero books, like the
The
battles
punching
and
is
stuff.
interesting. Yeah.
Unless there's like in what's his name? The guy who just wrote the most recent Daredevil series. Um uh uh
Zdarsky?
Saladin, no,
Oh, Saladin Ahmed. Yeah.
Saladin
Yeah. Saladin
Ahmed.
Ahmed. Yeah.
Yeah, he had one very earlier where Bullseye was literally ripping out a tooth and flinging it, and like that hand-to-hand combat in like a hallway is awesome. Um, but like, Batman just being swarmed by mobs of faceless villains and punching his way out. I've grown past that. The last hour of Age of Ultron, just infinite armies of whatever. Um, really even like the way like now Peter Jackson seems to understand this, but still feels the need to depict it, which I think is okay. When you get the opening of the Fellowship Ring and you're getting like, and there was this big battle, and you just see
Yeah.
swarms of armies like
They
go
just
and
slam into
clash.
each other. Yeah.
Right, they slam into each other, and then he cuts away. He's like, I want to show you the scale of this. This was
Hmm.
all of the Earth, and they were all, tangled up in this thing, but we're not showing you that battle. Um,
Hmm.
that's the right way to do it, in my opinion, because there's just only so many clank, clank, clank,
Yeah.
kaboom
Yeah.
type things that can be
Well,
interesting. And so I found myself mostly like, okay, got it, like flipping
I,
through those pages.
I think there's some of I think that's something that maybe he doesn't, maybe DWJ doesn't quite accomplish here, but he does show, because I think maybe he has like, there's a couple where there's like two full splash pages in a row of just battles there. And
Uh-huh.
so it's a matter of like, I think maybe he's trying to go for what you just described, what Peter Jackson did, this idea of like, I'm going to give you this big double splash page and just draw like hundreds of people just waylaying on each other. So you get a sense of this is like everyone here. And then as we go through, now we're going to jump back in and here's what's happening with our characters. Here's where Thea is and where Shiloh, and Honor, here's where they are in this battle. But I'm going to try to give you the scope first. And he does that in these big, ridiculous, kind of over the top splash pages. I get a sense he's trying to do something like that. And maybe he goes overboard a little bit because he likes to draw this stuff and it's fun
But
and
oh
it's
no,
over the
he
top,
loves it. I don't want to
Yeah,
deny him that
yeah, yeah,
pleasure,
yeah.
but like
But
I
it's
think
there just to be a visual feat. You look at it and you're
exactly.
like, holy cow! Like you don't, from a story standpoint, you understand this is one clan. It's that type of battle where they're just running at each other and hacking away at it.
And there's three
It's
characters in there I recognize and care about, and everyone else is a
yes.
nameless, faceless, don't care.
Exactly. It's just to hack away at people, to show that and to be kind of overwhelming. And you're right, it doesn't add much to the story, other than it's just, I think in his mind it looks cool. He likes drawing that stuff. So, but you're right. Ultimately it has to come down for this story. It has to come down. We got to figure out where our characters are. We got to figure out where they're doing, what they're going through, and how we get into them, um, into their minds and into their experience throughout this larger just kind of mayhem and melee that's going on.
Yeah. Um, so it doesn't bother you. Like, I mean, you don't mind the battles, or you like the battles, or
No, because
I mean, you're a
I
big DWJ fan, so like,
yeah,
this is par for the course.
yeah. When I get to something like that, again, my brain switches off narratively, and I'm just like, dude, sick art. Like that,
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to. So it's not like, oh God, here's another battle I got to get through. I can just kind of flip that switch and be like, oh, this is a page that he just wanted to cook on, and I try to sit and look at it and be like, did he, like, what kind of ridiculous and absurd things did he throw in there, knowing that eventually when we move away from the double splash page, we'll get back into the character and I'll get back into the story. So those kind of diversions, like I actually take myself out of the position of the reader, and I'm just now an observer of like this is a piece of art that someone made and worked on. So yeah, those things don't bother me too much because I'm used to it with DWJ's work that at some point he's gonna put something in there that you just like he drew this because he thought it was cool. You know,
Yeah.
he put the effort in and put this on page because he wanted to do something ridiculous, and this is what it came out to be. And how it fits in the story, if it fits into the story narratively, awesome. If it's a little bit of a stretch as to why it's there, you know what? I can let that slide. You know, like
Well,
I'm that much in the tank where it's like again, why is there a giant mech and a kaiju here? Because that's it. There's no other reason other than because there's no real reason. There's no real setup for that being anything on that scale prior to that. You know, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility given the world that they set up, but it's also like not a direct line of like, of course, we're going to have a giant mech, you know, like it's not exact one to one, but you're like, yeah, it's close enough. And it seems like it's fun. And so I can let things like that slide, even if narratively they may not be the most solid footing. So,
yeah, I felt the same way when I was watching or when I was reading Descender, because I think I feel the way about Dustin Wynn's art the way that you do about Danny Warren
oh,
Johnson.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I don't
Similar
care
to, yeah.
if it's big
Love
and
wins on.
mindless.
Yeah. Mhm.
When it's like, lightly sketched with beautiful watercolors,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll
Yeah.
just look at this all day long.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that it's another great cop in terms of what draws you to a book that you can let something slide if you're like, if I think about this from a strictly narrative standpoint, may not totally add up, but man, that's a sick page right there, you know?
Right. Well, and I think this is like, I don't want to undersell DWJ by
Yeah, yeah,
making
of
this
course. Yeah, yeah,
comparison,
yeah.
but it's a little bit like I imagine what it would be like if you're a Fast and Furious fan, where it's
Which I
just
am.
like,
Yes,
yeah, you're
yes,
like, look, the
yeah,
price of admission is absolute absurdity.
yeah,
And
yeah. It's over the top. It's ridiculous. And
I've seen
don't,
three of those films, and I think I've seen really like some of the best ones. I think I saw like seven, eight Hobbs and Shaw.
no, no, no. Five's the best. Five is
Oh,
by
five.
far, yeah,
Okay.
five is by far the best.
Well,
Because yes,
I
I've
thought
seen
Hobbs
them
and
all.
Shaw was like the best of the best when I watched it, but I think it was the best for the non-Fast and Furious fans of people who are like,
Yeah,
I just want an action comedy buddy
yeah,
cop
yeah, yeah.
popcorn
Well,
flick, and they just crushed it for
there
what it
is,
was, and
yeah, yeah.
it was equally absurd.
Before you said Fast and Furious, my mind went to there is a Michael Bay aspect to this, where
Yes,
it's like, um, obviously, I think DWJ generally tells a better story than that. Again, we're not trying to denigrate him, but there is that idea of at some point you're watching this thing, and regardless of how invested you are or are not in the story, you're going to get a moment that just looks awesome, you know. And
right.
maybe you're reading Extremity, and maybe you don't totally click with Thea's character journey, and you know that's fine. Maybe this isn't that kind of book you're looking for, but if you keep going, you're going to get an incredible fight scene, you know, and it just an unbelievable battle scene where you know people are hacking away with swords and spears and all that stuff. You're going to get these moments in there. Because I think that's the kind of thing, and having gotten to meet and speak with DWJ a handful of times at conventions, he's someone that just likes this over the top stuff. Again, we mentioned he's a fan of wrestling. He loves it. You know, did a book on wrestling. He put wrestling moves into Transformers, which is so absurd, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like you have Optimus Prime and Megatron like suplexing and DDTing guys, and it's hilarious and it's great. You had Absolute Batman. I think put a move like in that Absolute Batman annual that came out earlier this year. He had Batman do a move on a guy that I think is called the One Wing Angel, and to the point where like it's capital O, capital
Yeah.
like it is a specific move from a specific wrestler that people called out, and he was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. To the point where that wrestler who does that move, I think responded to a post was like, yeah, I'm Batman. You know, but like it's that specific of a love where he loves
Right.
that over the top. There's a showmanship to it. He loves that, and he brings that whether it's explicitly wrestling content or not, he brings that into his work and his storytelling, where there isn't kind of an overload of the senses. Instead, on some of those big double splash page battle scenes, again, you can just get lost and try to find all the detail and be like, this man had to draw all this stuff, had to draw
Right.
every character, every weapon, every reaction, all of this stuff here. And you're only going to do that multiple times in a book if you really enjoy that. Because, right, it's not super necessary. There are ways around that from a storytelling aspect, from a
Right.
strictly narrative aspect. There are plenty of shortcuts around that like I'm sure every artist knows when you're working in the sequential form. You can get away, you can cheat your way around to relay to the reader that, hey, this is a massive battle with like thousands of people. You don't got to draw all those people to get that across, but he clearly wants to do that because it's something that he finds interesting and enjoyable and he finds important to his story. And I have to give him credit for that because yeah,
Yeah. Well,
there are other ways to do it.
and let me articulate the other end of the scale is I, at least on my first 3 or 4 watch throughs of The West Wing, always found the sit room stuff boring because they're literally just describing stuff off camera. Like
Sure.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, here's a
Yeah.
hostage situation, or someone
Yeah.
invaded this one, or there's
Yeah.
genocide happening, and you literally get none of it. It's
Yeah.
just people in a room talking about the thing.
They're
And I
looking at
think,
screens. Yeah.
right, and I think for that, that's not quite enough. And then things like this, and often, superhero books, it's a
Mhm.
little bit more than what I need because I want a character-driven story. I want a plot-driven story.
Yeah.
I like action. I'm not anti-action,
Sure.
clearly, because when it's too much exposition instead of action, I complain about that. So there's this optimal balance that I think I'm just I'm very particular about,
Mhm.
and that says more about me as a reader than it does about the book. This is me revealing my own hand. I'm not making any great revelation about Daniel Warren Johnson. I'm just saying if I had it my way, especially once the point of this book emerges and the focus moves away from her dad
Sure.
into her, like she is less interested in battle. We are less interested in battle, and yet we're still delivering bigger battles than ever, in terms of what we have to spend time with. And it's not onerous. Like it's not that much. You're talking
Yeah.
about like it truly is a few big splash pages, but the fact that
They do happen in a row, I believe, or very close. So
they happen in a
you
row,
get a bunch real
and,
quick.
and
Yeah.
there are lots of flare-ups of violence throughout the series. Although
Yeah.
I don't mind those because those are like, they get attacked by a big monster,
Mhm.
and then the Panzina follow them, and they get attacked by a herd of the same type of monster. It's like
Yeah.
that all makes sense, and he didn't make a meal of any of those.
Mhm.
Like all of
Mhm.
those are just like, yeah, this is a hard, scary world. This is why people don't walk around in the ancient dark.
Yeah.
Um, so like for the most part, really flawless execution on everything. Like this is easily a 4.5 out of 5 star
I
book.
was just going to say, how do you rank this book here? Because you have not read in general. Remind me again. I don't know if we talked about this in the zero or not. Maybe we did. How much Daniel Warren Johnson, in terms of creator-owned stuff, have you
I always
read?
try them. Like I always
Okay.
try.
Okay.
I looked it up after this because it said in Comic Geeks that I owned the first 5 issues of this, which I do. But I think what it was is there was a comic shop in town, rest in peace, who anytime someone abandoned a pool there, he would just dump it all in the dollar box. And
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You
someone
must
must
have
have
pulled it.
pulled Extremity, and I was like, Daniel Warren Johnson, these are like pristine. I'll pick up these
Yeah.
five for $5. That's like one issue,
Mhm.
and I got essentially a whole trade for it. For some reason, that shop's not in business anymore. No one will ever
Yeah.
know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
but uh,
Mystery of the universe there.
but
Um,
anyway, I did acquire them all, and I think I had like flipped through the first issue, deciding if I was going to read it, but was so backlogged. I read the first issue of Do a Power Bomb. I read the first issue of one of his other ones.
Murder Falcon.
I think that had to be it. Yeah, Murder
Yeah.
Falcon.
Yeah.
And I thought Murder Falcon was the most interesting to me based on my little like teaser. Um,
I would
but
say that
all of
because
this
it's
to
about
say,
music.
right.
Specifically, it's about music. I think now that you've read Extremity, I was if you hadn't read either one of those, even though I think I personally like Do a Powerbomb a little more than Murder Falcon because it's a little more ridiculous on purpose. But I think you, with your specific music background, I think you would like Murder Falcon and some of the absurdity of that book. I would say
Yeah,
check that one
I
out.
think I just didn't know if I could hang with his art for a whole story.
Sure, sure. And
Um,
now that you have, do you think it's something you can go back to now?
oh, absolutely. No, I'm
Yeah,
going to read the collected works now. Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah.
now I know, like, I really trust him as a storyteller, not
Mhm.
just like
Oh,
great
sure.
splash pages or something like that, because
Great
those are
artist. Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah,
different things.
yeah.
And there are like great artists who are bad writers.
Oh,
Um,
yes, there are. But there's a
we're not
whole
going to name
lot.
them. We're
Yeah,
not going to name them.
there are a lot of great artists who also want to write, and they get a chance to, and you're like, maybe you should just be an artist.
Right. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of like writers who can draw,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but end up doing more writing. I mean, case in point, like when you pick up a book like Karate Prom,
Yeah,
that's going to be it's Kyle Stark's art, it's Kyle Stark's
yeah,
writing. It's great. It's great.
yeah.
It's just like it's if you get any impression from picking up the cover of that book is exactly what you want or expect
Yes.
it to be. If you
Mhm.
spent $12 in that book and were in any way disappointed, you have only yourself to blame.
Yeah.
But when I've asked Kyle like why he doesn't draw more of his own stuff, he has basically said like my art doesn't really fit the style of Marvel or DC. Like they have no interest in me
Yes.
as an artist. They have a lot of
Yes.
interest in me as a writer, and he's happy to do that. And then he likes being able to tell a higher volume of stories by being able to work with Erica Henderson
Yeah.
or Frank Galan
Yeah.
and all of these other great
Chris
artists that
Sweitzer.
he
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
to
Peter
hand
Kowalski.
scripts
Yeah.
to them and keep writing scripts in writing mode. Because I would think the only thing harder than finishing writing a script for a comic or finishing drawing one is immediately pivoting from one of those modes to the next one. Can you imagine like how agonizing it is to finish a script and be like, okay, now I have to put myself in artist mode
Yeah.
and push myself to like pencil and ink so many pages per day and
Yeah.
like crank this out. And then as soon as I hit a rhythm with that, I'm back into writer mode and
Back in the way. Yep.
my damn writer's back holding me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, what who was there was oh gosh, there was someone I think Brad Whitford said this about Richard Schiff that he was like, oh, Richard, he's going to do this one man Broadway play. The only problem is he hates the entire cast. Um, that's what I think of with with what it would be like to try to write
Yeah.
and draw your own stuff.
I
So
can't.
anyway,
I mean, I know.
I'm in
I,
awe of Daniel Warren Johnson now
I've
after
talked to
reading
some.
this.
I've talked to some writer artists, the combos there, and ask how they approach their work, and obviously it just goes without saying, but it's clearly it varies individual, but there are some that do it like you say, where they portion out those jobs, where they write a full script and then hand themselves a full script as if it was going to any other artist. They do it that way. And then there are some that do them simultaneously, which weirdly seems crazier to me. This
That
idea of like,
because
I'm going
then
to
if you
start
want
the
to go
story.
edit something on a
Yeah.
page that you
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
earlier in the writing,
Yeah.
you are also screwing with the writer or
Yeah. Yeah.
the artist because
But
the
in a
artist
weird
is
way,
like,
though,
hey, I already finished that page.
in a weird way, though, when you do it that way, it's like you're a one person Marvel method, where it's
Exactly,
like
because if the
I'm gonna write
lettering hasn't been done yet,
yeah,
right?
I'm going to write myself an outline, not a script. I'm going to write myself an outline. Then I'm going to draw it. Then I'm going to go back and fill in. Oh, but already know on this page I want, so it seems more chaotic, but maybe it's more fluid that way. And again, obviously, it comes down to the person and how they work and what they're comfortable with. But yeah, there is something about like the turnover you have to write and draw this stuff on your own. I think it there's something about, like, I think we mentioned this maybe when we've talked about the work of Jeff Lemire. The thing Lemire working on right now isn't the thing that's about to come out. It's the thing after the thing that's coming out. right?
Yeah, I
It's like
think
he's got
he's got like
yeah,
Stephen
yeah,
King levels of
it's there.
self-discipline
If
and
if you're buying a book from Jeff Lemire, it's like two projects ago because that one's done. The next book that's coming out that maybe even isn't announced yet, that's already done. And the thing he's working on now is the thing that comes after that. Like he gets so far ahead. I think because he has to because there are things he's writing and drawing, and then there's also things that he's just writing as well. So that level of pressure, knowing that like you're responsible for all of this stuff, you have to get all this stuff out there, and it's all on you, and your schedule goes down. That you can't make up time somewhere, right? If you're a writer and or you're the artist and yeah, you miss a couple of days, there are ways to get around it. But when you're doing both of it, like it all comes down to you, and to be able to churn that out and put the work out that way at such a high level is really really incredible stuff.
yeah. Any closing thoughts on this series?
No, I don't think so.
I mean,
I love.
what's your rating? I'm like,
Oh,
uh,
my rating for this book is probably 4.5 out of 5.
yeah.
It is up there for me. Like I said, I
Can
don't
you
think it's my
articulate
favorite.
what it would take for that extra half star for it to
Oh,
just hit perfection?
I think
I'm not
well, I
trying to
think
get you to complain about a book that you
no.
clearly
I,
love.
I I think part of this is just that because it's an earlier work, and I've read more of his later stuff where I just think he's a better storyteller,
Yeah,
and better way to kind of deliver his intention and his meaning and his emotion, which is why I think, because like, and part of it also is like I think of his creator-owned work that he's done, I think Do a Powerbomb is my favorite of it, and that's a 5. So like this by default has to be a little bit less than that because I like that book a little bit more. So it's a little bit something like that. So it's less anything that this book has done or has done or did, and a little more of just like I think personally I resonate with some other stuff he's done more. And so
right.
that's why I think it is there. And I do think part of it is it's an earlier work. And it's not quite as tight of a story. Because I want to say Do a Power Bomb and Murder Falcon are both like 6 or 8 issue series. So it's like he's tightened up because they're one volume stories, but they're not like just like five. So I think he's tightened up the storytelling a little bit, where it's a little more efficient, a little more streamlined. I think that helps. So that's what I would say about this.
Yeah.
But still an excellent book for me. So
Right. I mean, I would say like the only reason this wouldn't hit 5 for me is, there's a little yada yada action for me.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
also it's just like it's a setting of a book I wouldn't have picked. Like I wouldn't have picked a fantasy sci-fi type thing
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
because even the mild elements of fantasy are just too fantasy for me. That being said, like I forgot how much you can pack into a 12 issue series because we talked about the lesser ending of this book. There's
Mhm.
also the lesser format of this book. You know, someone other writers, a lesser writer or someone perhaps who wasn't writing and drawing their own stuff who like saw like, hey, the sales are okay. What could we push this to 18 or 24 or
Yeah.
36
Yeah.
or 40 issues? I don't think
It was
they wouldn't have covered a lot more ground. It would have just taken a lot longer to do it. And I love the
and
efficiency of a 12 issue.
and to be clear, I don't even know how the sales in this book even did. He clearly got to the end and story he wanted to tell, but I've got no idea at the time what those would have been. Sorry, I did just look it up real quick. Murder Falcon was 8 issues. Do a Powerbomb is 7. So he
Okay.
did kind of streamline his stories, and those are all one volume things. And I think there's a version of this book now where you're right. There's a little bit of fat trimming that could happen there, and he could have made it like if this were like 8 issues. There's a really tight story there that I think is just as effective and just as strong. But I personally, I'm with you as well. I think 12 is a great number for a maxi series like that because you get those nice 2 arcs.
Right.
It's
And I
it's
love
not
that.
just one
I
story.
think I'm thinking that it's more common because anytime like Marvel and DC do things out of continuity, they're often
Oftentimes
12
they're the
issue
maxis. Yeah,
maxi
yeah.
series.
They're
It's
they're 10
less
or
the
12
case
issues. Yeah,
in creator owned stuff.
yeah. Creator owned can go. Yeah, because a lot of times you're right. A lot of times creator owned stuff is here's one volume because you get one story, or it's ongoing and you've got 7 of them. You've got
Yeah.
30 issues or you've got 6. So getting something in that space there is always nice because I like having that having a medium point in the story, having a break here, and understanding that they thought about it in those arcs. But yeah, no, I think
Also,
this is a
I forget how niche what we're into is
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
because
yeah.
I just looked up the sales numbers for what I could find, and they're all estimated from Diamond.
Yeah.
They don't have the actual
No,
data,
no, no
but the
actual second numbers.
approximation for issue one is 17,900 issues sold in direct market for issue one.
Mm.
And when I think like you know I live in this bubble of people who sit around and talk about indie comics. We go to conventions to meet creators who do indie comics, and to think that there were fewer than 18,000 people nationwide
About
who
that
were like
first issue. Yep.
buying that first issue. Now
Hmm.
granted, I suspect later Daniel Warren Johnson first issues sell more, and then
Yeah.
Extremity 2 had an approximate 11,970, which is the standard tail off for an issue
Yeah.
2. Like
That's pretty good though. That's
that's
okay.
normal.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's well within the margin of like, okay, keep doing this. We got 10,000 readers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
could you
which is all
imagine doing a
that's
TV
often a
show and
big
being
sign.
like, there's only 10,000 viewers for the show. Keep it
I know.
going. Uh,
We're pretty close to that right now. But yeah, I mean,
it,
it goes back to what we were saying about him either last week, the week before, about him being the cover artist and the main story artist for that Absolute Batman annual this year. That as big of a name as Daniel Warren Johnson is to someone like you and me, and to a certain segment of comic readers, there were plenty of people who saw that and were like, "What is this?" And were either like, "This is great, this is awesome, I love it," or were like, "Oh Jesus, like get this off the stand. I don't want to see this in a Batman book, even Absolute Batman." There, he is still an unknown quantity to a large people of who are reading Absolute Batman, which, as we mentioned, is the biggest book of the year of 2025. Like, is the biggest comic right now. So has the biggest audience, the biggest reach, and yet there were still some people who saw that annual issue and were like, Daniel Warren, who? You
right.
know? And so yeah, it is a nice, not a nice reminder, but it's a helpful reminder that some of these names of creators that we know in the comic space do not have kind of the penetration into the like the quote unquote regular average comic person, the person that goes in and is just reading all DC or just reading all Marvel,
Sure.
or
I
even like
mean,
just
if you
reading all
compare
Spawn.
this,
Yeah,
the new Batman number one,
yeah,
500,000
yeah,
issues
yeah,
sold
yeah,
compared to Extremity number one, almost 18,000.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I mean, that's almost like that feels like it's one per shop. I know that there's not quite that many shops, but
yeah.
like that, it feels very, very low,
It's not many.
in
It's
the
not
grand
many.
scheme of
So
things. But, um, yeah, but I mean, but it just shows you what a bubble this podcast is in too,
yeah, it is. Yeah,
because when we just went to a con last week. Oh my gosh, was it only a week ago? Yeah. Uh, and when I went up to Alex Segura's table, I was like, am I being punked? There was no one there. I was like, he's a big writer. And Dan Waters, like, there are two or three people in line there. But I was like, I have seven books for Dan Waters, like not seven issues in the same series, seven different series that I want
mm-hmm.
him to sign.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was just like, are people not losing their minds over Dan Waters here? I don't understand.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then I really love talking to the new guys who are kind of trying to break through. Um, I had a really great conversation with Nicholas Draper Ivy, I think is his full name.
I think that's what
Um,
it is. Yeah, yeah.
he was right across from Dan Mora, which
Mm-hmm.
you feel terrible. Like he's like Dan Mora's eating a sandwich, like ordering a sandwich in line somewhere, and there's already 20 people in line for him.
Yeah,
And people have prepaid $10 per book per signature and are glad to do it.
yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah,
and the three tables across from him are just sitting there like twiddling their thumbs,
yeah.
waiting for people. Like it is what it is. But as I was talking to this guy, I said, now I noticed I was like, full disclosure, I had not heard of you, but I saw you were going to be here. So I went into the shop and I was like, okay, what's he got? And he's got this like Batman Beyond Static
Yep.
book. And he had one before that, Blood Syndicate, season one. And that one, he was just an artist. And then he had like an Action Comics where he did the variant cover. So it was like, okay, he starts with the variant cover, then he starts as an artist. And I said, now I noticed they also gave you a writer credit on um, this Batman Beyond Static. And he was like, yeah, they're trying to set me up as a guy who could be a writer. And it was very cool to hear, I think we hear so many horror stories about the big two and like exploitation and overwork and yada yada yada, but to hear like, oh, they still got a farm system, like they're still bringing new talent
They're
up.
trying. Yeah.
They're like they were like, you didn't super write this book, but once you list it as a writer, so that the next time we need a writer, we can pay you like a writer,
Mhm.
of this book. And if you still want to do art, that's great. And then I was talking to him about one of my favorite conversations from last year's GalaxyCon was Brian Stelfreeze, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "Brian gave me some feedback on my art because I'm coming from the manga world." So he had been self-publishing manga and is trying to move to comics, and Brian Stelfreeze was like, I think it was like a baseball analogy of like, you've got a big bat and you can like hit it over the wall, but you're doing that on every page. And that's not working. Like you're going too
Mhm.
big on every page. It's great that you've got that tool, but what I need to see is you pull it back so that when you use the big bat, you like it has the most impact. And
Well,
I was like, this is an amazing conversation I'm just having with a guy who just started writing this year. And then same thing for what's his name?
I
It was working with Morgan Hampton, who like they brought him up to
I want to
be
say, and I say, well, I
um
want to say both those guys I think are part of like the Milestone Initiative over at DC,
yes.
which is using characters like Static and Icon and Rocket and things like that. So yeah, I
Right,
mean,
but Morgan Hampton was given something in Green Lantern that he's working on, maybe the ongoing Green Lantern Corps
one of the Green
title.
Lantern books, I think so.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and something he wrote in there made it into the currently being published new history of the DC universe.
Hmm.
And he was like genuinely geeking out, as you should be, as like a new like rookie writer now being entered into the pantheon of like, I made permanent DC history with a little thing I did. I just was writing a book, but now that's part of the eternity. Like he was genuinely, it was like contagious affection and like happiness of like, I am so happy that this guy is having this experience. I don't read Green Lantern, so I had no idea what he was talking about. And I was like, I didn't have any of his Green Lantern books. I didn't have him sign Green Lantern. Oh no, it was not something from his Green Lantern that was entered into the Pantheon. It was something he wrote for the Batman Superman World's Finest Annual. He wrote a
Hmm.
little backup or pinup,
Sure.
like
Okay.
5-page thing in there that had such a big impact that it was moved into the new history of the DC universe, which is supposed to be great. I have him not been reading that.
No,
I think that's Mark Waid.
yeah,
Um,
it's a fun book. It goes back and it recounts all the major events chronologically through the DC universe. He did the same thing for Marvel a couple years ago, but yeah, I mean that's what you I mean when you I mean I remember seeing. I think the first time I saw Daniel Warren Johnson his show was 2018. So that's a year after Extremity has come out, and he's still not someone who has done a lot of work at the big two at that time, you know. And so going up to his table and having like he signed I actually don't have a number one, a first print number one of Extremity. I have a second print. I also have the Ashcan edition, the preview
oh,
edition. So I got him
yeah.
signed both of those. But yeah, it's you can go up there and get books like that signed from him and talk to a writer or artist like that. And I said I even knew at that point like I like this dude. I like this guy's stuff. I'm going to keep following it. And then to then get to watch it grow to where he can be given Transformers, where he can do an issue of Absolute Batman again. And the idea that that would probably been like unfathomable like 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And the fact that someone can be like that and still be relatively unknown to the larger population of comic readers. That's kind of the wild thing about it,
Right.
is that you can have this a significantly larger platform than what you had when you started early on, and it's still barely scratched the surface of what the average reader who walks into the shop is going to know and be aware of. So yeah, but I mean, I'm all for creators like DWJ who have such a distinct and different style, just getting more chances and more exposure. Because these books are awesome, and when they get a chance to do something more mainstream but still be true to who they are as creators and what their style is. Like I think that's just super cool because you're always going to have your house style with these characters, right? And so to get a different take on it, to get someone who has much more of a resume in the creator own space where
Right. But I think that's
where you
what
know their style and you know what they're going to do, and when they get to translate that into the license stuff versus going the other direction, because it's I like it going both ways. I like when there's a creator who has worked a ton at Marvel and DC, and when they finally do the creator-owned book, boom, I'm there. I want to read it. But when there's someone that I know from the indie space who has spent most of the time working in that way, when they say, you know what, I got a chance to write a superhero book, and this is what it was with Wonder Woman, with Dead Earth, when it was like, oh, wait a minute, Daniel Warren Johnson, he's going to do this Black Label book at DC. He's going to write a Wonder Woman book. Like the idea of him taking his style into that character, regardless of that, it's some dystopian future of the character of the world and all that. Just the idea of him writing and drawing Wonder Woman, writing a DC, one of the Trinity, was mind blowing, you
yeah.
know? And that kind of exposure, like, yes, I want to see that stuff. I want to see someone do that and know that their style is not being compromised in any way, and that if anything on that Dead Earth book, he got more room to work because it's an oversized format, it's the magazine style. So the idea that they just let him cook and let him do what his thing, understanding that the reason we're bringing you on to do this is because we want you to do you.
Right. It's a very cool thing that DC's been able to do
Yeah.
with the absolute universe
Mhm.
that I we're already over on our normal time, but
Yeah.
just as an aside, I think it's interesting that they have chosen to do that, and Marvel, presumably their comparison book right now is the Ultimate Universe, where they haven't really availed themselves that opportunity except for Peach doing
Yeah. Pete
X-Men.
Momoko. Yeah. Yeah. For absolute,
But
for
like,
alternate X-Men,
Mark
yeah.
Cicchetto doing Spider-Man is like,
Well, yeah, because
he could be on the main Spider-Man. Like
yeah,
there's nothing one-off about
yeah,
the artistic style of that.
they, they,
And
they
I
they
love
have
him. Like that's
they
not a
have
knock
incredible
on him.
artists there.
It's
They have
just saying
incredible
like
artists there. Yeah.
they didn't decide to tinker with the formula and house style as much as DC did, because DC was like, let's just, let's just let the
Yeah,
absolute
Dragata,
verse
Hayden
be
Sherman,
unhinged. Yeah, let it be
Javier
whatever.
Rodriguez. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some they took some really big swings there, which is always very cool. So but yeah, anytime there's more exposure for someone who's more of an indie creator, creator owned books, anytime they can get more exposure is great. And seeing Daniel Warren Johnson do those things, knowing also that he's always going to return back to his own stuff. And I think we said this in the Zero episode. As we're recording this right now, he has no books currently being solicited or published right now, whether it's his stuff or licensed stuff. And so I'm just hoping that means that he's gearing up for from some sort of announcement coming, where he's got a new creator-owned book, a new project coming out.
And you would think it would be one like this with this,
Yeah.
I hate the term, but cartooned, where he's
Well,
writing
yeah,
and
yes,
drawing,
yeah, exactly.
because that's the only thing
It,
that could cause this big of a delay, other
or,
than writer's block or personal crisis, or
just some sort of break. Yes, I'm hopeful that it's some sort of project that is his project, that'll be announced soon, because as of right now, it's got no ongoing books on, which I think is probably a first for him since he really broke in about 7-8 years ago. Once he started working, he's been working, whether it's his stuff or licensed stuff. So the idea that he doesn't have a book on the solicits right now is a little odd, and I look forward to what's next for him, because I'm always going to be there day one. Always going
yeah.
to be there day one with him.
Well, I would love to promise that we would have a Daniel Warren Johnson interview next week. It seems unlikely, but
Yeah.
I am going to try,
We'll
because
see
I
what we can
would
do.
absolutely love to talk about this book
Yeah.
with him. Uh, and I suspect your record would remain unblemished, in that, all of my reading, like, of like a Judeo-Christian framework onto this
I
is
don't know, man.
probably subconscious at best,
I
or
don't know.
completely unintentional.
This one I'm going to lean towards you on. I feel like this one feels that when you laid it out, this one felt more than pulling something from the punch bowl of his brain. This one felt like it had a little more intention to it. So
Okay, well, I
think
felt like
I would.
I had like a whole spool of red yarn, and I used it all. Like
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
all connected all over the room. It was like,
yeah.
and Shiloh is this, and the Essenes are this, and this line of dialogue on this page. So it did feel like some sleuthing, and I also suspect perhaps it was so obscured because he wanted it beneath the surface. Like he wasn't trying
That
to
too.
bring that to the
Yeah,
surface. And so for me to do that is like, I think it might be one of those where he's like, look, dude, I'm glad you got it, but like, calm down. Let the book be about what it's about. Like
sure, sure,
those are
sure.
fun, but that's not to overshadow the story I'm telling.
Yeah, yeah,
Which I
yeah.
think, that's certainly what I would say if someone like me were doing to this book what what I've done to it in my interpretive framework. So anyway, well, thank you for listening. We will see you all for one more episode this year, which I think will be a special of some kind.
No,
This comes out on
no. It
Christmas
does.
Day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it
If
does.
you've listened to this oversized issue on Christmas Day instead of being with your families, let us encourage you to go sit with your families now.
Yeah, but
Um,
that also means it is the last one of the calendar year because the next Thursday is the first.
and you'll be
So
nursing a hangover for our next one.
yeah, no, probably not. Yeah.
No, the listen.
Oh, listen. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
So
yeah.
we'll speak gently.
Yeah, go easy on that day. But yeah, we'll be back for we'll have another new book out.
Yes.
Intro.
Last January, I'm still buzzing from our theme month of Death Month. We've got a lot of things in the pipeline, but nothing locked in yet. So we'll let you know.
We'll probably make a decision at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, when there's an intro episode, you'll know, which is likely going to be the first. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thank you for listening for another year. And thanks for reading and tuning in and sharing and liking, and follow us on Blue Sky and Instagram and StoryArts.com, and we will see you next year.
Peace.